Yo, what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be taking a look at the top 10 most voted unique suggestions that have happened in the past 5 months. So from today, November 6th, going back till June 6th of 2024, I ended up looking at, I don't know how many. It feels like maybe over 1,000 suggestions, and I am pretty tired. So maybe at one point I will do this again where I go beyond June 6th and look at any other suggestions that were submitted that have over 100 votes. That basically was the criteria that we looked at for today. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw some because it helps out a lot. So essentially, I went back 5 months. We looked at votes, suggestions that had over 100 upvotes, meaning that the differential between the amount of upvotes and downvotes was a positive 100 in the differential. So an example here, right, is like this had 100 upvotes, this is 101, this is 99, this is pretty close, right? So I mean, there are some exceptions if it was a unique suggestion that I thought, hey, would be nice to be able to see, and I added this actually to our master sheet. So I'll probably port this over as well on the public one that I was thinking about, and just so everyone kind of has a update. And then I was even thinking about maybe adding a column on here that says resolution or resolved or after effects, something like that, that basically just speaks to, well, was the suggestion addressed? And then it made me start thinking about, man, what if we went back all the way to when suggestions were first being introduced, and then we tried to figure out, okay, well, out of all the ones that were really highly upvoted, which ones actually were addressed? Which ones had not been addressed, which ones were partially addressed? Like, that could actually be a really cool way of determining how much the game is listening, and then also gauging on average how long does it take for upvoted suggestions that are good ideas that the dev team does want to implement, from once it is suggested to its actual in-game implementation. How long is that? What's the delay? What's the turnaround time? So if you're interested in any of that, let me know in the comments below. So for now, we're just going to be taking a look at the top 10 suggestions. And so we're going to start with number 10, which it was submitted from Crambro here on 7/31 of 2024, saying every time KVK rolls around, we gain merits and spend those merits in the merit store. But the problem is that for most of us, there simply aren't enough items for us to buy. Last week, I threw away close to 4 million merits because there was nothing left to buy in the shop. We play hard for these merits. Please add speed ups, RSS, elixirs, gold stars, crystals, whatever. Just add something for us to spend these merits on. I've requested this multiple times in the past. Please listen to us and add more to the shop. Thanks a lot. And I would very much like to hear what a lot of you who fight and a lot of you who have excess merits, if you are able to full buy the shop out, and are you able to do it consistently when there is action going on, or even just from the beginning of a season to the end of the season? Do you feel as though you have enough merits left over by the end, and or you're just unable to buy out the shop completely, whether that's daily or weekly? What has your experience been there? Again, I don't really fight and do too much PvP, so I would very much like to defer that question to those of you who conduct yourselves with a lot of PvP engagement, and how that experience has been for you. Do you agree with Crambro that you should be able to have more items and more resources and materials that are in the shop for you to buy to use those merits so it doesn't feel like they're being wasted? Or no, do you feel like I'm actually getting good value and I am able to buy everything out of the shop, and that's with me having a high level of PvP? Okay, next one, number 9. Is going to be here from Dustin Wallflower. Please shorten the duration of Home Kingdom while waiting for KVK. The boredom is a big turnoff and players are becoming disinterested in the game. This was submitted August 21st. So, what, 2.5 months ago? About. I'd rather wait in KVK. At least we have more daily warrants, better resource tiles, and higher level pets. The waiting game is so boring. And this goes into things that we've talked about and touched on before when it comes to Home Kingdom just needing to add a little bit more to it, with the understanding that the main attraction is always going to be KVK. That is where players eventually will want to be at if you are not already in a position with your account to be there already and to be contributing in whatever capacity that may be. But the whole idea here is that when people talk about aligning things like the level of RSS nodes, warrants, as Dustin said, and again, I'm not too familiar with the amount of warrants overall and how that might change from Home Kingdom to KVK, so I'll defer to people that know more than me in this case, such as Dustin. However, What I will say is that the idea of, and was kind of a touchy subject, on raising RSS node levels in Home Kingdom to be aligned with KVK. The idea here is not to disinterest or dissuade people from going to KVK. It's so you're able to have your current level of your account progressing at the same rate that it would in KVK. So this way you're able to get your account to a position or a place, especially for those who may not necessarily be as PvP engaged as others, where you're developing, you're getting more to max building level, you're getting more to max tech level, you're eventually able to have more RSS stockpiling for the wars. I mean, if you think about it, I could almost make an argument that says Home Kingdom should have higher RSS tiles than KVK, because that's your recuperating and your stockpiling portion or phase before you go into KVK. So if the whole idea is to maximize and utilize your Home Kingdom to prepare for KVK, why not have higher RSS tiles? Why not have more opportunities, whether it's aligned warrants or more warrants, if it's giving you more chances to just prepare your account and to set yourself up for success once you get into the KVK. And I think that's really what the overall point is here, is that there should be some more events happening during that in-between time. I also don't think that the season should be that long when you're in Home Kingdom. I think a lot of people have been referring to 30 days or a month. That seems to be pretty consistent. What we initially thought was a good number was something like 1 to 2 weeks, that I felt was more appropriate, and what we really had hoped people were going to be kind of selling themselves on. Or I don't know if I should say selling, but really advocating for. Because the idea here is that when you're in Home Kingdom, this isn't meant to be a long rest stop. It's meant to be an appropriate rest stop. And you don't need a month, I would assume, for the majority of your active fighters to heal to get back to full strength or to whatever your historical maximum power was. So yeah, I don't think it needs to be that long, and I think that there just should be other things added into the Home Kingdom that make that short amount of time you're there just more beneficial. Okay. I think we're on number 8. So number 8 here was submitted by Natty Boy. This was done on September 18th. And we have the problem. Currently, kingdoms have no way to remove deadweighted accounts from their server, which impacts their server cap. As you can see, 318 upvotes, because again, it does auto put 1 check and 1 X, which impacts their server cap and ability to grow during migration. Kingdoms are forced to threaten to 0 players to move off, who often have either quit the game or won't pay for migration bundle. The solution: bring Caratents, this was the Truce Island or the Farm Island, in Home Kingdom. The king can exile players to Caratents. This can be placed on a cooldown such as 1 or 2 days, so it's not abused. I mean, I feel like that's a decent amount. Maybe a little high, or set a certain number of times it can be used in a period. When a player is placed in exile, they can't join a KVK until they migrate to another server. This way the system can't be abused. Players can farm and kill Darklings and Caratents, but can't teleport back into the main map. If exiled on Caratents, players could be given 1 passport for free per month to help migrate. Players who were exiled who migrate out cannot use return migration to come back. This solution is good for everyone. It allows kings to better manage their kingdom, doesn't force them to 0 accounts, which can cause players to permanently quit, and allow for more flexible migration in the future, which is currently limited by server capacity. So it's funny. Initially, I actually had proposed this a while back, and I thought it was a good idea up front. And I thought it was probably the best idea that I could think of out of a number of things. And then eventually, I upgraded this idea. And even though I do think this suggestion can be one option, and I do think it is a good option, what I now believe is the best option that I have thought of thus far is where you just allow you allow alliances to register for KVK. Similarly to how the alliance will register for Roots of War, you apply this same system to KVK. So this way, now the officers and the leader of the alliances will manage their players, because they're already pulling data on them already. At least, again, most of the well-oiled alliances are in kingdoms. And so if people stay, or if they're kicked out or removed from the alliance, that's on the leadership teams to do, and then the king will select which alliances they want to register for KVK. So then by the time that phase finishes, you have up until that ending phase for any of the leads or officers to remove players, and then you're just going to bring in the people that are going to be actively fighting in the KVK. So this really gives you a lot more control, and at the same point, it addresses everything else, which it doesn't matter what. Now, if you still want to have this True Silent or something to that effect, where it allows for it allows for players to kind of address rogues, that would probably be the only thing. However, you could also just create some kind of a king title that you can hand out, or maybe you can give to multiple people, where it just doesn't allow for them to do any PvP, right? So basically, if you have this title on as a rogue player, you can't attack anyone, right? That could be just the ultimate way to do it in a very simple form, which doesn't also require for them to get kicked out of any of the zones. It doesn't require for you to come up with a True Silent or anything. And it might actually solve a lot more things than we may think. But I do very much believe just doing the alliance registration, as the king does that, really would probably just be the best solution right now. And then if that may not work, then you could maybe consider this one. Okay, let's go to number 7. So this was submitted by Darkhill on October 29th. So this was, about a week ago that this one was. So get rid of the make way policy in Bastions. Bastions have made the game, and we have 323 upvotes. Bastions have made the game much more boring and much more dreadful to play. Sadly, Bastions are not balanced in any way. Looking around many KVKs now for back-to-back seasons, it seems to suck the fun out of every KVK. Bastions as a concept are not bad, but in their current state, I personally believe it will kill the game. Make way policy is the main reason Bastions are so broken. You can defend a Bastion with 3 players if you really wanted to and never put another unit on the field and stall for days or even weeks if you rotate people for stamina and are willing. Bastions in the current state are not strategical and do not add any fun strategy to the game. Right now it is simply who is sick of taking Teds first and gives up, rather than who is better and more strategic. Also, being able to extinguish the Bastion 4 times is a little much. It's very, very easy to hold. Virtually all teams hold them until they are sick of Deads and cannot be brute forced. So you should only have to beat a Bastion 1 to 2 times to take it down. Please nerf Bastions or remove them. Removing make way policy, meaning if a team dominates the field, they can stop incoming reinforcing marches. Also reducing the amount of times you can extinguish before a full burn. Or just simply remove them or tweak the way they function completely. A building like a Bastion should be exciting when it's placed and spark PvP and be an intense moment, while currently it's just an annoyance to see and sucks the fun out of any fight. So it's a long read, but I think the short version is that, and this is the way I have kind of been explaining Bastions for how they look to me, is that a Bastion is basically like a pass. That's how it acts. That's how it operates. Is that you have to overcome the Bastion before you can move on. Similarly to a pass, you have to overcome the pass through rallies and garrisons before you can move on. And a Bastion is basically a portable pass, and they're usually placed in choke points. And so you combine that really at its root or its fundamental level, and again, the whole point of being out in the middle is that you get to enjoy a lot more open field PvP at that time. And so that's something that I think is a lot more beneficial overall, and I think what a lot more people really want out in the field, compared to kind of being stagnated and stuck or delayed at some kind of rally or garrison trip during that period. And then you talk about the make way, which again allows for basically people to have this invincible run from their city to the Bastion, right? If you're within the certain amount of time, I think it's 30 seconds or so, or maybe 60, one of those. But basically, if you can make it from your city to the Bastion within a short period of time, right, you basically can kind of make it there with an invincible status of not getting hit. And so it just kind of adds that much more impact to how the Bastions feel. Yeah. And then, of course, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Again, in case anything I missed. All right, let's get to the next one. So we have 10.9.876, 10.9.876. Okay. So this one was submitted by AEQ, Engage More Devs, giving us an old Christmas skin, and this was posted on July 30th. So we got 345 upvotes on this one. For a summer event with how much money the players are investing in the game is outrageous. Are you testing the waters of how abusive you can be? Implementing more DAS while nobody asked for it. Nerfing elixir healing shadow nerfing pet coins earned, shadow nerfing migration slots, shadow nerfing this is not Forest of Legion. I have no idea. FOL. Acronyms escaping my face right now. Shadow nerfing merits, shadow nerfing alliance capacity once again in the middle of the season, literally one day after you told your players will be more transparent. Is there even any days left in this game? Is it only investors putting pressure on our poor lone CS and one poor lone dev to milk as much money as they can from this already abandoned game? We want communication, we want transparency, we want answers. I mean, I think, obviously, despite some language choices, I do feel that I don't even know if I'd say this is a suggestion as maybe as it's just more feedback that is just kind of put into a suggestion. But I will say, objectively speaking, this is something that it's kind of hard to say that there's like absolutely no one that can get behind this. I think it's very likely that, and it has been this way ever since, and I can't remember who made the post. I think it was Aussie or someone else at some time. And so, you get to this point where, you see this announcement on the Discord, and they talk about how you have... and so, sorry, the lady's asking for food. But you basically get to this point where you see this announcement that's made on the Discord. They talk about being more transparent, being more upfront, more honest, and trying to also give us appropriate deadlines and times on when they're going to put things out. Kind of an advance notice. And those things just respectfully haven't been happening as much as they could have been. I think there have been a few moments where we've seen things done in an appropriate capacity, what we would consider to be such, but it hasn't been consistent. And I think that, to me, is the biggest unfortunate hurdle that the developers themselves are causing, which is through their own actions. And so, yeah, I do think those are things that it would be nice. And it does suck to a degree when an update comes out and then you have a number of just amazing people in the community that love playtesting. They love trial and erroring. They love stress testing stuff. And then you always hear about a number of changes that were made that were not specifically mentioned in the patch notes. And then it just furthers this negative narrative of shadow changes. And it just isn't a good look, unfortunately, on the community. Okay, let's go to number 5. This was made by Abdabeast, 21, 470 upvotes on this one. This suggestion targets 3 main things. Buffing RSS nodes, and this was done August 25th. Buffing RSS nodes in home realm, buffing conquest achievement rewards, buffing speed-ups, resource gem drops for Darklings, Darkling forwards, wheels, and all other events. After the season, it's apparent how necessary it is only to resource heal, but also to kill troops and rallies and defenses in order to win. Most people are okay with that as long as it's sustainable. Currently, it's absolutely not. If you buff all rewards and drops of speed-ups, RSS from Darklings, forts, wheels, and other events, then it will make wars last longer and motivate people to be more active. I would also highly recommend adding gems to Darklings, not only since free-to-plays are starting to fall off, but also because I am now forced to buy pet coins at Supply Station for mana. I get 0 gems or speed-ups from these bundles. I'm running out of gems completely with this spending meta. PS, add 20 teleports instead of 10 in VIP shop. I had to spend 750 gems on teleporting too much this season. When we go back to home realm to heal from our crazy wars, we can't even gather resources efficiently. Why is it when we are put into a fighting map, it's when the resource nodes are a higher level? That's when we have the least time to gather. And this is, again, a point that I mentioned before. And farm, one idea to fix this problem is by buffing all resource nodes, but also having a permanent 50% gathering speed buff during off-season. Interesting that Abda and me are pretty aligned here on what I had said before, talking about how tiles should be higher in Home Kingdom as an argument compared to when you're in KVK. Similar to the 500% engineering one. Right now, the only point of winning the season is bragging rights. I finally won my season after spending thousands of dollars to resource heal. My account didn't benefit in any way. These rewards are actually useless. In other games, the rewards are good enough to motivate people to zero their accounts to win. If we want this game to get even more competitive and fun, we need a better reason to fight and win. Give people more speed ups, resources, golden heads, etc. for winning a season. And this is something that I have noticed when I was going through a lot of these suggestions. Is there was a number of people that were advocating for things like better Titan Legacy rewards, different Titan Legacy rewards, better end of season KVK rewards, and I ended up seeing a number of suggestions that were floating around about this. And I think the buffing RSS nodes is just it just makes a lot of sense, right? you're fighting in KVK, if that's kind of the whole point, is to fight and not necessarily to gather, then sure, it's okay if you want to have high-level nodes in KVK, or maybe you have an increased gathering speed in KVK for the current nodes, and or maybe still raise some of the levels, right? So you can benefit from basically trying to max out the minimal amount of gathering you would be doing in KVK, but then you get a boost of gathering in even higher nodes in Home Kingdom. So there's this benefit of being able to recoup and heal, and then also build up a stockpile of RSS for when you need to fight an RSS heal in KVK. Buffing Conquest, achievement rewards, I mean, again, this, along with the speed ups and the gems, it does kind of make sense, right? I think a number of people were mentioning something about there not being as many speed up offerings or rewards compared from COD to Rock. Now, I haven't done a lot of the data analysis. I'm kind of just deferring to some of the people that I know that have played both games and have strong accounts as well, and have often spoken about this dynamic between the two games, where one offers a little bit more and therefore incentivizes a little bit more engagement on the fighting action, i.e. Rock, compared to COD when it comes to some of these additional resources and rewards that could be dropped. But I would love to hear from you. If you're someone who's played both games, do you feel like because you're getting more of these rewards, it also incentivizes you to go out in PvP and to fight a lot more when it comes to the KVK seasons, or not? And then how do you feel about that here for COD? Okay, let's go to number 4, which is going to be from Abda again. 532 upvotes for this one. We need cheap migration for our first season migration by immediately putting in the Rise of Kingdoms passport system. Players are going to be stuck for months where they are now. 100 mil plus players can't even migrate for possibly 2 full seasons because it takes 3 months to collect all the passports needed. Every single alliance in this game is relying on migration right now to recruit new players and grow. All the top alliances have already been recruiting and planning for a migration this offseason. And this was posted about 5 months ago, so it's June 11th. Every single alliance in this game, I'll talk to you, most of the player base is planning on moving somewhere new. There's so many new groups being formed, old ones needing new players. The solution to this is simple. Make our first migration 5k gems, like it has been with the current system. After the first migration, then you go to the password system described in the mail. Ideally, we get 5,000 gems for all migrations going forward, but that's unrealistic from a business standpoint. We did not sign up for this game thinking migration was going to be a thing. This needs to be changed ASAP. So I've seen kind of 2 variations of this. One is the first migration is 5k gems. Other people have said the first migration is free. And then I've seen, and then a third variation is depending on where you're going. If it's a closer kingdom to you, then it's cheaper to migrate. If it's a farther kingdom away from you within the same season, then it costs more to migrate. So there's kind of this, I'm forgetting what the appropriate word is, but there's this margin of how much something would cost if it's a kingdom that's closer to you, which means it's around the same historical date and timeline for how long it's been up, versus something that's a little bit farther away from you. Maybe if it's a newer kingdom where you would be stronger, right? So there's some kind of appropriate adaptation that's being factored in there. But again, I kind of somewhat agree with this. Like, I'd be okay if they did the first migration for 5k gems and then they just made it to where it costs on your second migration and beyond, right? And then because I think it would be nice. I'd love to hear what you guys think on that one. All right, number 3. This is by Roy Solel, 756 votes on this one. Server cap for servers. Some time ago, the server cap has been increased to around 40 billion per server. Keep in mind, this was done in July 25th. So this is what, a little over 3 months ago? Sometime ago, server 40 billion power. This gave older kingdoms and alliances a chance to create super servers with an insane amount of power on it. No more TFS. Yes, we covered this, right, when there was this seemingly kind of no cap for that one migration season. But today, when the second batch of SB2 servers open for migration, has been shown that the server cap that previously had 40 billion has been reduced to 20 billion. This was around 22 to 23 billion that we saw, thus creating a complete unfair situation between the G1 servers and alliances and pretty much the rest of the game, G2 plus servers. I mean, it's pretty accurate. I write this suggestion because I think it is only fair to revert back the most recent change and allow the alliances to have the same migration cap and thus bring it back to 40 bill. We should have the same opportunity for migration like the previous servers. This change completely dismantles our experience with the game and limits our capabilities to the fullest. So, I will say this. I understand where Roy and where a number of other people were coming from at the time. I just don't believe that the solution here is to raise the cap again. And part of that is because if you look across a number of kingdoms, the amount of active players that, even if you want to look at like the CH16 plus data set that we've been showing for top kingdoms, top alliances, but eventually we'll be working in a CH25 data set that Rich is working on to add for when we do the data pool across all kingdoms. And we're also going to be working on something as well that can maybe identify activity in another set by looking at like average power growth, or maybe like actions or things like that, factoring in helps and things like that, that would essentially indicate that, hey, someone's online and they're doing stuff. Still working that out. But not to fall off too much here. The idea is that if you raise the cap, there's just not enough overall activity in the game that could really sustain where if you did something like that, it would just increase the amount of dead kingdoms, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Compared to if you take, if you leave things where they are now and you potentially look at, and there is two ways of looking at this. First is that let's say you did increase the cap, right? So not only would you at that point have more of the overall player base consolidated into less servers, but you also would create a higher range of super kingdoms that would take that much longer to stabilize because of what they ended up doing. So then we look at the opposite of this, which is that if you leave things the way they are now, things are actually already stabilizing. Like Kingdom 23 was at around 37 billion. They're now under 30, or under 29. EIS, Kingdom 61, is the strongest kingdom right now if you're looking at the top 300 players and the top 600 players to define kingdom power, where they're at around 32 billion, right? A little less than 33. But again, the number is going down. And even Kingdom 5 is below 30 billion now. Now, maybe if you're talking like everyone's fully healed, yeah, maybe some of those numbers would actually be higher, and you might have a couple other kingdoms above 30. We'll have to wait till the end of the season to see how those go, and then we run another scan. But the idea being is that the longer you keep these things in place, and because you have to understand, like Nawar, 23, maybe EIS and a number of other kingdoms that were near the top last migration season, either didn't get anyone in or barely got any players in. And I'm talking through standard migration, not the special. And so what that did is it continued to stabilize those so other kingdoms could catch up, and those were pretty much like a hard-ish stopgap at the top. It didn't really allow for them to bring anyone new in, so not really any fresh blood and no like massive power spikes. So you're basically addressing it by stopping it on the top and then allowing the bottom to catch up, right? So it is working, but it's probably just going to take another season or two, maybe 2 or 3 seasons for it to really have more kingdoms that are lining up and catching up. But I do think the way that they're approaching it right now is correct, at least for a period of time. Maybe eventually they can increase the power a little bit, but you also have to address the elephant in the room, or at least speak to the facts of it, is that a lot of these top kingdoms are not necessarily recruiting kind of mid or low average power players. They're recruiting top players that are like 100 mil plus or just stronger than maybe others might think they are. And because of that, their kingdom capacity is filling up a lot faster based on the power cap, which isn't really accurate to go off of like the slots that you would see on a migration page. So if it says like 150 over 150, you could bring in 15 100 mil pluses and then you're done. Right, and that's just an example, but we've seen a number of these kinds of situations happen in kingdoms where they've barely been able to bring in even the 300 cap that it was before they reduced it to 150. And so that's really what it goes off of. It's just the challenge is that that system isn't transparent enough and it's not descriptive enough for people to really understand how to take the most advantage of it. But then you have some other kingdoms, even if they're a little bit more in the minority, where they're recruiting more of their median average power. And so they're getting in, 50, 75, 100 plus players even now, because they're not just recruiting the top of the top players, or the creme de la creme, if you will. Okay, let's go to the number 2. This is going to be from Jason. This was submitted on June 20th. And again, some of this stuff may not completely be relevant, but we'll still go over the things that are. This one has 1,048 votes. So Jason put a question: as we see the latest announcements regarding migration, I'm sure the whole community is the same. How does extending the period of migration home kingdoms fix the current issue? Why do the developers see it as a better choice to force players to pay out $385 to migrate after the developers made a mistake and lowered the server caps? This does nothing but hurt the development of the game rather than listen to the community. Suggestions: make the server caps public knowledge, how many players and how much power. I mean, again, something that would be great. They've made a very tiny step towards that, but not enough to where I would consider it an actual full step, maybe like a quarter step. And that's just where if you're an individual player and you're aiming to migrate to a kingdom, it'll tell you what, if your power, where your power is at, how many migration permits you need, I think, to get there, and then if you'll be able to actually go or not. The next one: revert the server caps from before and actually increase it to account for account growth. I mean, I do think this is something that should eventually happen, and we just touched on that. Host a Q&A live with the developers and community so the players can understand what's going on. I mean, whether it's live or it's just something where maybe you select certain community members to go and do that, where it's kind of like this I don't want to say like a meet and greet, but kind of like a town hall, if you will. And I talk about this often, but Infinity Kingdom did this for a period where they've at least done one of these, where I was one of the content creators and there was a few others, then a few community members that basically got together in a private server with some of the IK devs and some of the content creator team. And basically we sat in this private Discord for about 2 hours. It was all text, so that way they could translate it as well and share it with their team. And then they gave us like this short view. So like here was things that were happening in the short term that was upcoming. Here's some long-term ideas and plans they had. They asked us for some feedback. And then we got an opportunity to ask questions of them. And I thought this was kind of a great workaround to do something like this. And I would love to see Call of Dragons do something like this as well, unless maybe they have another idea. Don't get me wrong, would a live Q&A be dope? Sure. But a live Q&A, is that something they would take a chance on? I don't know. Would I still just love something? Absolutely. Make a roadmap and show the community what will happen within the game, as currently the future of the game does not look good for a lot of us older players in the future seasons. I mean, they've done something, I think, on the anniversary where they had like alluded to some future plans, but is it something that they're doing consistently where it's like once a quarter or once every 6 months? No. Would that be great if they did? Sure. I actually wouldn't mind that. Even if it's just something like, hey, here's some things we're thinking about doing, right? Maybe here's a channel to talk about what, some ideas or give us some feedback. Instead of going for a cash grab, give us what we were been promised, like a new map or S3 already, right? And keep in mind, this was almost 5 months ago, right? 4.5 months ago. Okay, last one we're going to do is the number one most voted one here within the past 5 months. And this is also by Jason. This one's at 1,317 upvotes, but a little under 1,200 or a little under 1,300 if you want to minus out the 66 from the X's. And this is just talking about the Alliance member cap. We in the game have seen you've lowered the Alliance member capacity from the current 200 to 165. For many of us who play the game, this is a huge change that will negatively affect many alliances in many aspects of the game, from leadership, planning, battle strategies to everyday players and participating in Roots of War. There is no benefit that we can see from lowering the Alliance member capacity. This will also impact the community aspect that has been built across multiple kingdoms. Many players want to continue playing with their friends, and lowering this will make it hard for leadership to keep tight-knit groups together and still be effective and fair amongst all players. Suggestion: do not change the Alliance member limit and leave it at 200, or no one that I would personally like to see, or one that I would personally like to increase the capacity for alliances, as a lot of time in the game has passed. Many more players would like to play with each other under one shell. Either way, can the desk please address the upcoming issue that will affect all alliances as the next KVK starts? Any insight to this would be highly appreciated. So I think the biggest challenge here often is communication and pacing. So when you are releasing information, the fact is that when they announced this, there just was not enough time to really prep. And maybe from their end, they may think there is. But an example would have been, like, let's say they had introduced warbands, and then they introduced a couple other things that kind of hinted at warbands, and then they said, okay, now we're also going to be reducing the member capacity because we would like for there to be more than just one made alliance in the game to take more advantage of warbands. And because of that, we're going to be trying to lower the member capacity. However, we will be sure to give everyone at least one season to continue playing at the current capacity, and then you can make adjustments, right? So everyone kind of knows it's coming. You have a pretty clear roadmap laid out. And the sad part is that that just wasn't done. And I think that would have been nice, and I think you wouldn't have got as much pushback from the community off that as well. And yeah, so anyways, those are my thoughts on that. That's pretty much it. I'd love to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, until next time.